Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our second episode of Letters with My Sister. I'm Laura, in case you have forgotten, and my fellow guest, excuse me,
Not guess, Laura.
not guest, excuse me, I'm so sorry, my fellow co host.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been such a long time, but yeah, I'm
Yeah,
Nimwi, if everyone
yes,
also forgot. And yeah,
yeah. All
it's
right,
it's
guys.
sorry.
Yes. No, no, you're good. You're good. I tend to do that. Sorry, guys. I tend to do that a lot. I don't know why I just jump into how do I say it? Like when somebody's pausing, maybe they're thinking about something to say, I tend to jump in. So if I do that a lot, I do apologize. I also need to learn how to just like sit back, pause, and like wait for the moment to settle before putting in my 2 cents, before putting in my thoughts. So let's quickly remind people about why we're doing this podcast, and also maybe just recap from what we did in the first episode. So for people who did not watch the first episode, basically me and Mimwe decided to start this podcast because we had been sharing a lot of voice notes throughout. It's
Yeah,
been a while. It's been like a
yeah.
few
How long
years.
has it been?
I can't even remember, but we've been
Yeah,
sharing voice notes back and forth, and we've basically talked about anything and everything under the sun.
exactly.
And yeah, we just basically decided why not just start a podcast where we're basically also, it's literally like taking our voice notes, but in front of a camera, right?
Yeah.
And sharing our ideas. And last week we started talking about what friendships mean to us. Do you want to remind listeners about what you learned from that episode, or what you shared from that episode? Just a few tidbits.
Um, I think I can just talk about the takeaways that I got from that episode, and
Yeah.
it just made me think a lot about my communication styles in
Mm,
friendship, and how I noticed, just from the questions that you're asking me, how I tend to shut down when it came
mm,
to dealing with conflict, or if there was tension in the friendship. So I've even like this past month, I've been really thinking about that, and how I think I can do better and
mm.
improve when it comes to things like this, because I just tend to shut down, which I feel like is really unfair for the other person. But yeah,
Mhm.
our first episode kind of made me think that sometimes I can be a little bit avoidant in my
Mm.
in friendships. So this is something I really have to work on.
Yeah.
Um, what about you? What do you think um, stood out to you, or what did you learn the most from our first episode?
Yeah, I think similar to you, communication style, just the way that I tended to avoid conflict, and the people pleasing programming was very, very strong in my friendships. I lacked boundaries. I think we touched a little bit on boundaries in friendships, and for me, that was non existent. But one thing that really struck out for me was love languages in friendships.
Okay.
And I guess love languages does correlate a little bit with communication style, because yeah, just the way that you're able to express love or give love to a friend, um, there can be a clash. There can be a clash in the way that you express love versus the way that you receive love, and then your expectations for the other person. So for me, that really struck out. But I think the boundaries was probably the most important one for me, because it's I realized in a lot of my friendships I did let um, going back to the people pleasing programming, I
Yeah,
did let a lot of things slide. I wouldn't vocalize what I really felt, or how I really felt about situations. I
exactly.
would just keep it in. And I guess this is also a little bit connected to with what you said about communicating and how to deal with conflict. And yeah, I think that's also going to be a very interesting segue into what we're going to discuss today about
Exactly.
just
Yes.
verbalizing, yeah, verbalizing our needs and how to do that. And it leads on to honesty, right? So today we're going to be diving into the topic of radical honesty in friendships. And this is, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one,
Yeah, for
definitely.
sure.
So, that being said, let's dive a little bit into the meaning of radical. So, what I'm going to just refer to the notes first
Okay.
to let you guys know what we found out about the meaning of radical honesty, and let's focus first on the word radical. So, I'm looking at my notes, guys. So the etymology of radical, and this is I found this very interesting because I didn't even conceptualize it when I used the word radical. But coming from a science background, and I'm a science teacher, we use the first root that comes out of the seed. We call it a radical, right? And it forms
Okay.
into the root, and it goes into the ground, and it
That is
forms the
that is
foundation
interesting.
of
I never knew
the
that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's spelled differently, but it has the same sound. So the radical is that little first shoot that goes into the ground, right? And I'm reading here. So the etymology of the word radical is it's about digging deeper. So going to the root of a specific problem. So not staying at the surface level, but going to the depths, going to the root cause
Yeah.
of a specific topic. Yeah. And in the context of honesty, when we're talking about radical honesty, we're basically trying to distinguish between, are we being honest at the surface level? So we're trying to just avoid conflict, or we're trying to keep the peace, or are we diving deep into why we're being
Yeah.
honest, or like what is the actual, trying to pinpoint the exact cause of whatever situation comes through or comes up.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So are there
Just
any like situations? Yeah. Are there any like situations or scenarios that have happened in your life where you've danced around the topic of, am I going to be radically honest, or am I just going to be like surface level honest to keep the peace? Is there anything that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many
Yeah.
examples. And just like to add on to what you were saying before, when people hear the term radical, they think of something that is extreme, whether it be like a radical decision, a radical protest, but actually the word has a more, calmer meaning, and it's about, so it's not about being aggressive, blunt, or hurtful, but just being genuine, and just being honest, I guess. But back to what you said, definitely there have been so many situations where I guess I found myself just walking on eggshells, biting my tongue, just to, I guess, just to keep the peace, not rock the boat. I guess mostly just for survival.
Survival. Yeah.
Yeah, just for survival. There were incidents that happened at work, and I just felt that
Oh,
if
yeah.
I spoke up, I mean, because yeah, I don't even know if I what more I can disclose. Anyways,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
yeah,
true.
just I mean, it's work is a place most of us spend most of our lives in.
Hmm.
So if you do speak up, and then if the other person or people are not as open to hearing what you have to say, it can cause a lot of conflict, and then your whole time at work is just uncomfortable, and there's a lot of tension,
Hmm.
and that's not exactly an environment you want to be in. So yeah, have so many examples.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, just leading on to what you're saying, I feel like maybe society also hasn't provided the environment for honesty, for radical honesty. What I mean by that is a lot of people do crave truth and do crave honesty, but when it comes to actually being honest with someone, not a lot of people are able to receive
Yeah.
like radical honesty, right? Not a lot of people are able to um, I mean, I guess it also depends on when we'll jump into this topic later about the timing of delivering your honesty, or the tone that you deliver your honesty through.
Yeah, definitely.
But I feel like, yeah, it's maybe, okay, so let me just jump into my people pleasing timeline, because I'm kind of working on that. It's still not 100%, I will admit, and I still do think a lot about how to avoid conflict. I still do think a lot about how another person will receive my honesty. But there were 3 distinct situations, like very recently, I would say within the last year and a half, where I decided to be honest for the first time in my life, and it didn't go so well for me. So what that means is I basically lost like 3 friendships over just me finally deciding to say how I feel. This could lead into the next topic about what maybe my toning wasn't good. Maybe my tone wasn't good. Maybe my wording wasn't good. But still, it's the mere fact that I was able to go deep within and figure out, okay, I need to express what's truly going on inside, because I don't want to keep living in resentment. And then I vocalize it, and then and then the other person receives it as an attack, or the other person receives it as, like, are you, like, where is this coming from? That's another thing I got before, like, where is this coming from? Because I don't think people are used to deep level honesty. I feel like people are just used to surface level honesty, because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to cause conflict. Yeah.
If I may ask you, why in the past were you afraid to speak up?
Oof. That's a good question. I think my nervous system just was not used to speaking up. I did come from we're both African descendants. We both come from African backgrounds, right? And in the African household, it's, you're seen, right, and not heard. So speaking up for yourself is very, I mean, if you speak up to an adult, for example, it's very disrespectful, right? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to question an adult. You're not allowed to speak up for yourself. You're not allowed to defend yourself. I remember a point in my teenagehood, I think I was 16 or 17. I had, sorry. I can even talking about this, I can feel my nervous system is getting a little bit jittery, right? So I'm gonna regulate as I'm speaking. So yeah, you can tell that I'm not used to being honest. I mean, I'm not used to being honest in the sense of speaking what I truly feel, right? I can be honest with other things, but just like what's going on here, it's not common for me to say. But anyways, I remember should I share this one? Oof. There was a very distinct
place. This is a safe space, so go
on. There was a scenario that had happened when I was 16 years old, and it was literally it happened with my father. So there's a wound there, of course. My father is very authoritarian. How do we say
authoritative?
Authoritative, yeah. So he's you don't say things, or you don't question him, whatever. So there was this one night where I decided to question. I decided to snap back, and that didn't pan out well for me. That did not pan out well for me. And I remember just going back into my room. I felt so deflated. And I'm not going to share what happened next, because I think YouTube would probably probably ban this video, so I'm going to just skip over that part. But yeah, I think at that moment I had decided, internalized the idea that I'm not allowed to say how I feel, because the moment that I say how I feel, love will be withdrawn, right? So my father's love was withdrawn, or I'll get into trouble. So it's safer for me to hush. It's safer for me to not express my thoughts and my feelings. And yeah, that's just literally, I internalized it since 16 years old, and that's how I lived since then, up until 1.5 years ago when I decided to finally speak up for myself. Mm,
I totally understand what you mean. And actually, I just had this epiphany right now. I mean, just like from listening to what you were saying, you were
yeah.
conditioned from a young age to not speak up, because if you speak up, it will lead to this. And for me, why I had not spoken up, I guess, when it came to conflict with friends was because I obviously didn't want to lose a friendship, which
Mhm.
stemmed from not wanting to be alone, which goes back to fear of abandonment.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, it's just it always
Environment.
everything goes back to that, just the fear of being
Yes.
abandoned. And it literally just I had a light bulb moment, like listening to you, like that's where it stems from. Um,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, it's just
Yo, yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, it is really crazy, this life.
Mm, really.
Yeah. Mhm.
And also just another question that's coming through right now is um, when in situations where you have not verbalized how you feel, just to keep the peace, has that led to inner tension within you? Where what I mean by that is at some point, one thing triggered there's the okay, so basically in the context of your friendship you wouldn't speak up or you wouldn't vocalize something, and then is there any like breaking point or tipping point where something had occurred and then basically everything that was inside just imploded or yeah, just came out because you kept
Mm.
everything in?
Um, I think maybe there was one incident
Mm,
a few years ago. I think when I was 22, and that was when I really began my self-improvement journey. I was working on
mm,
myself and trying to be more confident, more expressive. And I had had an incident with this friend of mine. And yeah, just one day I, um, I guess, had the courage to just basically tell her how I was feeling. And obviously, with
mhm,
that, it led into us having a fight. And then for that moment, our friendship was over. But then her and I, we kind of years later we reconnected, and we have a healthier friendship. But I think at
mm,
that point, I did not care whether the our friendship continued or not. I did not care to
mm,
be abandoned or be alone, because I just had had enough. Yeah, I can I think maybe for me, when I am completely fed up is when I choose to speak. But also our friendship, we weren't that close, so
okay.
maybe um, I'm more comfortable doing that with friends who I don't have that deep of a connection with.
Yes,
Yeah,
yep.
so maybe that could be it. Because I can
Yeah.
also think, actually, now that I brought up that
Mm,
incident, I can also think of another situation where a
mm,
friendship ended. When was this? Like 20, I don't remember exactly.
mm,
Yeah, we had like a little fight, and I I just decided to say how I was feeling, and it led into like a
mm.
very nasty fight, which I'm not proud of. But yeah,
Yeah,
our friendship ended, and
yeah,
yeah, which is sad.
yeah,
I think, yeah, for me, it's more difficult with the having these conversations with my friends who I have a deeper connection with.
right,
Yeah,
yeah. I feel like
but
yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I think like my response, the most common response that I have is just to distance myself, and obviously I do have
Mm,
my resentment, um,
mm,
and I'm pretty sure that person can feel it, which is unfair for them. So I'm
mm,
like working on it. Like now I'm currently like wrestling with something, like feelings
yeah.
inside. Should I say something? Should I not? Should I just get over it? Like
Oh
still,
my
still
goodness.
this way. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up for that. So, I do you feel that because this topic about honesty, it's easier for us to be honest to people that we don't have a deep bond with versus people who we do have a deep bond with. Does it go back to the fear of abandonment, right? because we have such a deep connection with them. And if we feel it, maybe subconsciously we feel like if we're going to be radically honest with this person that we have a deep connection with, they'll abandon us, versus somebody
Yeah.
that we don't have a deep connection with. It's okay. Like I can
Yeah, because
move on.
it'll be a loss of such an important relationship. So maybe
Yeah.
that could be it. Yeah.
Okay. And just now we're going to segue into the next conversation about like the timing of or the tone and the wording of our honesty. And since you just mentioned about how you're sitting with something and you've been wrestling back and forth about when to say or what to say, so how do you feel about like what is the right time to be honest? Like, have you figured that out? Like honesty too early versus honesty too late? Like, how do we figure out the stance, between when to be honest with someone? Because that's something that I've really struggled with. I'm also dealing with the current situation right now where I want to say something to someone, but I'm just like, oh, let me just pause. Let me just, that the whole concept about, okay, pause, like wait and figure things out and then bring it up. And then, but then if you bring it up like maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, it's like, oh, so all of this time you didn't say anything. So like, when is the right time? Yes, why didn't you say anything? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't know when a good time would be, because if you address the situation immediately, maybe you'll be seen as, oh, you're overreacting, or you decide not to say anything because you think, oh, this is just a one-time thing.
Right.
Yeah, I honestly don't know when a good time ever would be.
Right.
I don't know. But I think should it matter really? As long as I think what's important is just addressing the issue, because as a result of you not speaking up, you're kind of abandoning yourself. You are focusing more on what is the word? You're focusing more on taking care of the other person's feelings and kind of shrinking yourself. So you're doing yourself a disservice. So I think for me, my answer is there's never I think it's irrelevant. Timing is irrelevant. I think it's important to honor yourself and stay true to yourself, I think.
Just to add on to what you're saying. I think just to add on to what you're saying there, honoring yourself. So we don't have to conform to what society says, right? Like, okay, you should do this and you should do that. So for some people, honoring yourself could be, okay, I'm going to pause and reflect, and then I'll bring it up. Or other people honoring themselves could be, okay, I'm going to say something right away, because if I don't say something right now, I know myself, resentment will start to build up, or I will start to see this person in a negative light or a negative way. It really depends on the person, I guess, their healing journey, their growth journey. So I think timing is really, for me, it's context. I'm trying to use words I don't know how to say. Contextual.
I don't even know.
Okay, basically, instead of using fancy words, I'm just going to say basically depends on the person, right? It really depends on you and your journey, for sure. Because everyone's journey is different. No one has the same pathway. No one has the same journey. And I guess it also, adding to that, whoever is receiving what you're going to say, I guess they would need to also have a certain level of emotional maturity, maybe, to be able to receive it at whatever time you give it. You give your honesty, but that also brings us to wording. So how do you think is the best way to approach giving honesty to someone, to a friend?
I mean, I learned this from you.
Yeah.
I don't remember everything, your exact wording, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about it's something. I- You said something about, I don't know. Could you remind me? I've gone blank. You said something about your wording. You
Yes.
should,
Instead
um,
of saying you, put it back on yourself. So instead of,
yeah, okay.
I think this is what you're talking about, right? So
Yeah,
instead of saying
yeah.
you did this, instead saying this is how it made me feel, right? So focus on how an action made you feel as opposed to what the person did. Because I feel like if you focus on what the person did, it'll feel as an attack on them and it's not going to go well. Is that what you trying to
Yeah,
remember?
this is what I was referring to. So you're
Yep.
saying, so maybe, for example, my friend laughed at me in front
Mm-hmm.
of everyone and I felt embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
So do you mean, so I guess one would have to approach a situation like this. When this situation happened, I felt like this, as opposed to
Mm,
you laughed at me, I
yeah.
felt like this. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
taking the tension off of them or the energy off of them and putting it back on. It sounds weird for me to say putting it back on you. That's not what I'm trying to say, but those are the only words that are coming through right now.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, basically that's it. Yeah. Okay. I think it also does help to mitigate and to minimize the energy of conflict, because you're not making the attack about not attack, sorry, the honesty. Ooh. You're not making the honesty about them. It's more about like how you received something or how something made you feel, and then you're just expressing that. Because again, at the end of the day, when we're being honest with someone, we're giving them an insight into our internal world, right? And
Yeah,
what's going
definitely.
on internally after a situation occurred or after a situation happened. I did have a situation that happened last year where the wording was, I understood the person's intention, but the wording was very, very off. The way that they um, told me what had happened, it basically made me feel like I was a bad person and I did
Okay.
this and I did that. Literally, those were the words that we used, like you did this and you did that. And it didn't feel good. It really didn't feel good.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, being very careful with how we approach this honesty thing, and also, I guess, including the person in the conversation. So not just dumping on them. Okay, this is how I feel.
Mhm.
So maybe asking them, how do you feel about what I said, or how does this land for you? Right? That would be
Yeah.
something that would probably
Yeah. And just
minimize the
an
energy.
issue, yeah. An issue with radical honesty is, what is the truth? Because everyone's truth is different.
Everyone's truth is different. There
Yeah.
you go. There you
What
go.
is the truth?
That is wow. Wow.
It's
What is
such
the
a
truth?
difficult topic.
It is. It really
Yeah.
is.
You
Oh my
see,
goodness.
you saw the situation one way, but the other person didn't see it that way. So
Wow.
how? Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that's another rabbit hole. I never thought of that at all.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. All right. Okay, yeah. So let's dive deep. Dive deep. Sorry, let's dive into the next topic about breaking points. Right. So what is a breaking point that led, like, okay, I can think about one example that I will share, and but what is that tipping point that pushes you into being honest finally for the first time in your life? This is when it comes to friendships or those deep connections that you have. So, for example, is it for me? There was one particular instance where I don't know, I can't really pinpoint like what made me decide to do it, but it was just like I was so exhausted emotionally
Yeah.
that I couldn't go another day, and also like the internal tension that was just building inside of me, like I couldn't take it anymore. I feel like that was just my breaking point that just made me Like, listen, I can't, this is how I feel. Like, I feel like if I don't say anything today, then um, I'll lose myself. I will
Exactly.
implode. Yeah. So for me, maybe it was just more emotional exhaustion. What about you?
I think for me, they've been triggered by frustration. When I was
Mm,
younger, in all honesty, I never used to stand up for myself or really say how I
mm,
felt. It was only until I got to my early 20s, I started working on myself and I gained more confidence. Yeah, I was more self-assured where I was able to really speak up for myself. I really feared conflict. I mean, even though we're just trying to, I guess, just teach our listeners that radical honesty should not be seen as, something dramatic, intense. I think, yeah, I used the wrong word. It shouldn't be seen as a conflict, but more so where you can just be completely honest and say how you really feel. But yeah, when I was really young, I was afraid of those situations. So I think for me, um, what usually triggers it would be, yeah, just frustration.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. While you were speaking, I was also thinking about care for the other person. You know, for me, when I was giving the example about how emotionally exhausted I was, I know myself, and when I start to become emotionally unsettled, or I just don't feel safe emotionally, I'll be, sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I'll be passive aggressive to the person. I'll be passive aggressive, or I'll just, like, yeah, just ignore them. And ignoring someone, again, it's not the best, um, coping mechanism, right? But yeah, I will use negative coping mechanisms or unhealthy coping mechanisms if I don't express my emotions and my thoughts. And I feel like radical honesty can be a way of caring for someone, right? As
Yeah,
opposed to,
definitely.
yeah, as opposed to wanting to generate conflict, or something like that. So yeah, I see it as a form of care for yourself and care for the other person.
Yeah.
um,
And as you're saying this, I've
mhm,
realized for me, I am able to be more radically honest when I guess I'm approaching the scenario from a care standpoint. Maybe, for example, if my friend is going through a situation or
yeah.
they're harming themselves, well, haven't had any friends who did that, but yeah, I would just say how I felt, because it was coming from just from a place of love and care.
Mhm.
So I think for me, those scenarios are easier for me to handle. But then again, when you do give okay, when you do say how you feel, it can also be met negatively. But I think for me,
Yeah.
it's easier when it's coming
Yeah.
from a place of care as opposed to
Mm.
saying how their actions are affecting me. I think those scenarios are so much harder. Like,
Yeah. Right, right.
yeah,
um so this basically, like, makes me think about what radical honesty is not.
yeah,
So um what am I trying to say? So, mm,
yeah,
like, I think, yeah, we basically discussed what radical honesty is not. So attacking the person, right?
definitely.
We think about, we care about the person, and we want to make sure that our friendship or our relationship or whatever is able to sustain or survive long term. I think also this topic might be a little bit connected to the timing of everything, but is it a good idea to be honest about everything? What I mean by that is, every time, because again, every person, like you mentioned, every person's truth is different. So your
Yeah.
truth is different, my truth is different, right? So if we don't see eye to eye on something, am I now going to be like, okay, I'm going to be honest about this because I don't agree with, I think that this is stupid, and I'm going to let you know. And like, are we going to be, I don't know what the point of what I'm trying to say is, but like, there's a time and a place for honesty, right? We're not just going to impulsively say everything
Yeah.
that we feel.
Yeah.
If a behavior makes us feel a certain way, am I going to be honest about that behavior because it made me feel a certain way, as opposed to just, okay, but where is the mirror? Reflect, why is it making you feel this way? Like, there are certain situations where you don't need to vocalize like
Yeah.
how it makes you feel, because it could just be a projection. It could just be something internal that you need to work on. So not every situation requires you to be radically honest. So I
Yeah.
guess just like, yeah, where's the line?
All that. I guess why you're bringing it up is because you're trying to show our listeners what radical honesty isn't. So what you
Yes.
describe, what could we call that? Is it being blunt? Is it surface honesty?
I guess it could be, yeah, actually, like now that you say that, it just like put a light bulb. It could be, yeah, surface honesty, and also just being blunt, and also just um, uh, being self-aware to the point where you're able to realize, this action, it made me feel this way because of, it's not necessarily the other person intentionally did that, but it's maybe a wound that got triggered that I need to work on, and that I need to
Yeah.
reflect. I'm projecting onto them. It's not that they intentionally, let's say they said something and then you take that statement out of context instead of asking for clarification, and then that statement makes you feel a certain way, it makes you feel attacked, but it's got nothing to do with the other person. Their statement was neutral, but the way that you took it was based on something that happened in the past, long time ago,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, there's a lot of things. It's not impulsivity. It's not sharing every single thing that comes through.
Exactly.
It's not being blunt. It's just about, it requires a lot of wow.
Yeah.
This is a deep topic. I'm just
Yeah.
like, as I'm
It's
speaking, I'm
basically,
just
yeah.
realizing, wait, wow.
Yeah, it's more about telling the truth that actually
Mhm.
matters,
That
even
matters.
when
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And just as
Hmm.
you said, it's not about saying everything that you think and being
Wow.
brutal or disrespectful.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Mm.
they're very, very different.
Oh my goodness.
And it's
Like I
also,
just,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah, no, it's okay. I was gonna say something, but I think we've already touched on it. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we also basically touched on the consequences of radical honesty. Just to wrap things up, I guess, leading back to what we talked about, what is radical honesty versus what is not, and when is the right time to be radically honest, and why do people avoid it? The
Yeah.
consequences are always going to be the fear of backlash, or the fear of losing friendship. What for you? What do you think is your biggest? I mean, I think you've probably answered this, but just to remind viewers or listeners, sorry, what is your biggest? How do I say? I don't want to say fear, because fear is not the right word to use, but um, hmm, I don't know, like.
Are you trying to say what outcome would I fear the most when I would have to
Yeah,
be completely honest? I think, yeah,
yeah,
exclusion, abandonment,
mm,
basically. Exclusion
yeah,
from the group, uh, losing losing a friend that I consider really dear to me.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and I guess it stems back to abandonment, and yeah.
Yeah, same here. Same here. It's still, for me, I still battle a lot with being honest and sharing my deepest, darkest thoughts and feelings, and even my body physically reacts when I need to be honest. That's how,
Yeah.
when I need to be radically honest. That's how unfamiliar and uncomfortable it is for me to do it. Like, yeah, if I could put into words the type of feelings that happen internally, I guess the best way to express it is just the fight or flight response gets activated.
Yeah.
And
Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
Where do you feel it the most in your body?
yeah, it tends to be here in my chest
Okay.
area and in my throat. Like it's just the throat just constrict. Like
Yeah,
you're
like
not
the
gonna
throat
say
chakra
anything
is
today.
closed. It's not
Yes,
even
you're
speaking.
like, who do you think you
Mm.
are? Like, what are you trying to do right now?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, it's definitely, it takes a lot of working through. It takes a lot of regulating, self-regulating, soothing, and just realizing that sometimes things need to be said. But it does go back. I just remembered earlier when you talked about survival, and there is a time and a place, right? We can't just be radically honest at work, right? There, because we have a job to maintain, and
Yeah.
we don't want to lose. That's a consequence. If you're going to be radically honest at work, the consequence is you lose your job because
You gotta make money.
yeah. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna ask our listeners or our viewers a question just to close this off. Do you think that your friendship would be able to survive if you were radically honest?
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
that's something to think about. That's something to ponder for sure. All right. Yeah, so I think that we basically addressed everything that we wanted to talk about today. We dived into the etymology of the word radical and what radical honesty is versus what surface honesty is. We dived into the timing of honesty, when to deliver it, when not. That one was a very interesting one because there is no right timing. We figured like it really just depends on the person and the situation. There is no right timing at all. How to use our words better when it comes to being honest. What were the breaking points that led us to, share our honesty or be honest with someone, and then what radical honesty is not. So we're not dumping on people. We're not just impulsively sharing everything. We're just sharing what matters. And then the consequences of being radically honest. Do you have anything to share?
Um, in all honesty, I think you summed it up so well.
Yeah.
I think I've just like drawn a blank.
No, you're good. You're good. This topic was very like there's so many ways and pathways we could go
Yeah,
with
it's
this
it's such
topic.
a rich topic. There's so much to discuss. I mean,
Mm,
before we go,
mm.
what have been some consequences that you've
Oh God.
faced when you've been radically honest?
Mm. Yeah, so since I started, I've lost friendships
Okay.
over it. Um, so for me, the consequences have definitely been abandonment, like going back to that fear of abandonment that we
Yeah.
talked about earlier. Um, and if I reflect on it in hindsight, maybe my wording could have been delivered a little bit better, or maybe my tone could have been. I mean,
Mhm.
for like obviously, I would need to. How do I say? I'm just critiquing on myself. But if another person, if a external person had to see the way that I delivered it and give me feedback, maybe their feedback would be different. But just for to critique myself, maybe it could have been the wording that I used or the
Yeah.
tone that I used, right? But I did lose a handful of friendships, I'll say. Yeah. But also, sorry, let me just quickly add one more thing. I also feel like when I reflected on these situations that happened, I feel like the reason I lost these friendships is they saw one version of me. They never saw this other version, this honest version of me. Maybe the person was comfortable with this version of me, whereas
Yeah, that's
when
true.
when I started to decide to be honest, this new
Yeah.
version of me was probably uncomfortable for them. But that's just me speaking from the other perspective. Like, okay, maybe they just weren't comfortable with this new version of me. Who knows?
Yeah.
I can't jump into their minds. So yeah. What about you?
And have you had positive experiences where you've been honest and the person was receptive and open to hearing what you had to say?
Yeah, I think my closest friendships, like you like other, I have another very close sister. Yeah, it's been received. I yes, I'll say yes, yes. I have.
Yeah,
And this is what made me realize and understand that these are the connections that actually matter, and that actually
yeah,
I need to work on. Because if your honesty, if you're speaking up for yourself for the very first time in your life, and the person leaves you for that, then they were not meant for you, right? They were clearly not meant for you. So, because you're standing in your authenticity, and if they're unable to receive that, then the friendship is not for you, or the relationship is not for you. Unfortunately, that's just
yeah.
the reality. Yeah,
Because it's unfair for you to have to
yep,
keep walking on eggshells and
exactly,
biting your tongue. And if they are okay with this, then yeah, that is the wrong relationship for you. I
exactly.
just want to add something before we leave. Even if I have to ask myself the same question, thankfully I have had good experiences when it came to being radically honest.
Hmm.
The one situation I found myself backed in a corner because I did the usual thing. I kind of retreated, pulled
Hmm.
away from this person, and she confronted me, but in a very, it wasn't aggressive or anything. And I kind of, backed into a corner. So I was kind of forced to say what the issue was. And I
Hmm.
wasn't proud of it at all. I felt so ashamed by how I acted, and that was really unfair of me. Oh, I just, yeah, sometimes, oh, I frustrate myself. But anyways, yeah, I was honest with her, and we had like she created a safe space where I was able to just say how I was feeling. And I guess
Yeah.
initially the reason why I wasn't honest in from the get-go was yeah, it was connected to work as well. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if I say this, it's just gonna cause like a huge thing at work because
Mm.
there's already tension. It's just gonna be another thing added on. But I'm really glad that she approached me.
Mm.
Sorted it out, but yeah, just another example of how I can be avoidant sometimes. And yeah, it's a constant reminder that I need to do better. I really need to do better. Yeah.
Girl, we're just on this. We all need to be better for
Yeah.
sure. We can all do something better, but yeah, I can resonate with that
Yeah.
definitely. All right. So yeah, we've come to the end of this episode, and I hope everyone had fun. I hope everyone had a good time hearing our thoughts, and we would love to hear your thoughts as well. So let us know. But yeah, until next time, Laura and
Mimwe.
letters from a sister. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you guys.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you so much. Laura, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Yes. All right. Cool stuff. So.